It had been over 25 years since my grandfather passed, and my grandmother had never gone on a date since. My family encouraged her to get out and meet people, but Grandma always said that she was just fine with all of her memories. She wouldn't date, she refused to move from her deteriorating neighborhood, and she was adamant about not buying herself a gun. I even tried to give Grandma one of mine, but she rejected the notion. So as I watched the crime grow ever closer to her doorstep, I began staying over her house more often. Even after I started dating Lynn, whenever my new girlfriend had to travel for work, my duffel bag would already be prepped, and Grandma would have fresh sheets waiting for me in my old room. The time came when Lynn and I were going to be taking our first overnight trip together, and I let my grandmother know where I had stashed a pair of loaded pistols. But she assured me that she was always safe. After all, over 6 decades in the same house and not one break-in. Though I thought she was being naive, but I couldn't decide if that was worse or if instead had she been living in fear. As usual, I asked her friendliest neighbors to keep an eye on her, but I didn't expect much. They were a married couple close to Grandma's age, and even though their daughter lived there, she was rarely sober after the sun went down. My girlfriend and I were traveling to see a stage play about 90 minutes outside of town. Then we stay at a hotel and drive back in the morning. At least that was the plan. But as I exited the expressway headed for the venue's parking lot, I received a disturbing phone call from the police precinct. My grandmother had been watching television upstairs in her bedroom. When she walked to use her facilities, she noticed a motion sensor light was lit in the rear of her house. Figuring the neighbor's dog snuck over once again, she went and looked out her window to investigate. But instead, she saw someone standing in her yard. Her view of the person was partially blocked by a decorative wall, but she could tell it was someone unfamiliar, and definitely not her neighbor. Grandma went back to her room to cut her TV off. Then she locked herself in her bathroom and dialed 911 to report the man standing out by her back door. The last thing she remembered, she heard footsteps creeping up her stairs. Then she watched as the bathroom doorknob furiously twisted back and forth. I was a psychopath driving back, and the thought crossed my mind that it would be off-putting to Lynn. Instead, she would later tell me how much she admired my protectiveness. We got to the precinct and I immediately made sure my grandmother was safe. She was in a conference room with several officers surrounding her. I don't know what story she was telling them, but ironically everyone was laughing. I walked in. She smiled and pinched my cheek as if nothing happened. I pulled an officer aside to get the full story. It seems Grandma wasn't harmed at all. When she had returned to her bedroom, her phone wasn't the only thing my grandmother retrieved. She also went to her closet and grabbed what I left for her in case of emergencies. A bullet ripped through her bathroom door, and judging by the trail of blood leading out of her house, someone had a new souvenir. Neighbors told police they had previously seen two men walking around the area, and given their description, I think I remember seeing them in the neighborhood before. Maybe it's a coincidence those two hadn't been spotted since. Maybe not. Either way, there are a lot of people on the lookout for them to this day. Several months have gone by and my grandmother still doesn't want to relocate. I'll continue to try to convince her. But for the time being, my cousin Larry and Grandma worked out an agreement. Sonny will be living with her for a while. That's Larry's 120-pound Doberman. I'm sure he'll make would-be intruders think twice. And probably the neighbor's dog too.